Kismet traced the crescent moon birthmark on her cheek. It was a delicate mark, the color of desert sand, against her olive skin. But within the opulent walls of the harem, it was a brand of misfortune. The other concubines, adorned in silks and jewels, whispered behind their hands whenever she passed. They called her moon-cursed Kismet, believing her birthmark brought bad luck. Kismet kept her eyes downcast, her heart heavy with their scorn. She sought solace in the palace gardens, finding comfort amongst the fragrant jasmine and the gentle cooing of doves. But even there, the whispers followed her, carried on the desert breeze. Halima, the harem matron, ruled with an iron fist veiled in sweet words. She used the concubine's superstitions to maintain her control. Halima would often pat Kismet's hand, her smile tight, and say, "Such a pity, child, such a beautiful face, marred by such a mark." For then she would turn to the others and remind them of the misfortunes that had befallen the harem since Kismet's arrival. A broken vase, a wilted rose, a sudden sandstorm, all blamed on the innocent crescent moon. One evening, as the sun dipped below the desert horizon, Halima summoned Kismet to her chambers. The room was filled with the scent of burning incense, and shadows danced on the tapestry-covered walls. Halima sat upon a plush cushion, her eyes glinting in the lamplight. "Kismet," she began, her voice smooth as honey, "the unrest in the harem grows. The other women fear you. They fear your mark." Kismet's hands trembled. She knew what was coming. Halima continued, "For the sake of the harem, for the sake of peace, you must leave." Kismet's voice caught in her throat. "Leave," she whispered. "But where will I go?" Halima's smile vanished. "The desert," she said coldly. "The desert will claim you, as it claims all unwanted things." The desert air was cold against Kismet's skin as the palace gates clanged shut behind her. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sand dunes in hues of pink and gold. But Kismet saw no beauty in the dawn. She clutched the thin shawl around her shoulders, her only possession besides the simple cotton dress she wore. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dust that swirled around her feet. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The desert stretched before her, vast and unforgiving. She was alone. Kismet walked until her legs ached, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The heat beat down on her, and her throat grew parched. She knew she would not survive long in this desolate land. She stumbled, her knees hitting the hot sand. A wave of despair washed over her. She closed her eyes, waiting for the end. She had accepted her fate. Far across the dunes, Sheikh Zafar rode at the head of his tribe. Their camels swayed rhythmically, their hooves leaving soft prints in the sand. Blue tapestries adorned their saddles, fluttering in the desert wind. Zafar's face was etched with concern. His tribe was searching for a new home, a hidden oasis whispered about in ancient legends. He prayed for a sign, a guide to lead his people to safety. Kismet opened her eyes, drawn by a soft whimpering. A small gazelle was caught in a thicket of thorns, its leg bleeding. Kismet, despite her own despair, felt a surge of compassion. She crawled towards the frightened animal, her hands gently working to free it from the thorns. As she worked, she began to hum a lullaby, a tune her mother used to sing. It was a song of comfort, a song of hope. Zafar heard the melody carried on the wind. It was a haunting tune, unlike anything he had ever heard. He signaled for his tribe to stop, his heart drawn towards the unknown source of the music. He dismounted his camel and followed the sound. The soft sand cushioning his footsteps, he crested a dune and saw Kismet, her back to him, tending to the injured gazelle. Her voice, soft and clear, filled the desert air. Zafar stood mesmerized, his search for a sign seemingly answered in the most unexpected way. Zafar approached Kismet slowly, not wanting to startle her. The gazelle, now free from the thorns, nuzzled Kismet's hand. Kismet looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She saw a tall man with kind eyes and a weathered face, dressed in the simple robes of a desert nomad. He stood before her, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Peace be upon you," Zafar said softly. "I heard your song. It is a beautiful melody." Kismet blushed, lowering her gaze. "It is just a simple lullaby," she murmured. She felt a flicker of hope, yet fear lingered in her heart. She had learned to be wary of men, especially after her rejection by the harem. Zafar gestured towards the gazelle. "You have a kind heart," he said. "To care for another creature in your own distress speaks volumes of your character." Kismet shrugged. "It was just a small thing," she replied. Zafar studied her closely. He saw the sadness in her eyes, the weariness in her posture. He saw the faint crescent moon birthmark on her cheek, and a strange sense of recognition washed over him. "You are alone in the desert," he observed gently. "It is a dangerous place for one so vulnerable." Kismet nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She did not try to hide her vulnerability from this stranger. There was a sincerity in his gaze that disarmed her. "My name is Zafar," he said, extending his hand. "I am the sheikh of this tribe." Kismet hesitated for a moment before placing her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle. "I am Kismet," she whispered. Zafar smiled. "Kismet," he repeated. "It means destiny, does it not?" Kismet nodded, surprised he knew the meaning of her name. "Come with me, Kismet," Zafar said. "My tribe offers you shelter and safety. You need not face the desert alone." He gestured towards his caravan, the blue tapestries shimmering in the sunlight. Kismet looked at the caravan, then back at Zafar. She longed for safety, for kindness, for a place to belong, but old fears held her back. Could she trust this man? Could she trust anyone after the cruelty she had endured? Zafar saw the hesitation in her eyes. "We mean you no harm, Kismet," he assured her. "We are a simple people guided by the wisdom of the desert. We offer you food, water, and companionship. You can decide later if you wish to stay with us or go your own way." His words were gentle, his tone respectful. Kismet looked at the injured gazelle, then at the vast, empty desert. She knew she had little choice. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. "I will come with you." The rhythmic swaying of the camel lulled Kismet into a peaceful trance. The desert landscape unfolded before her, a tapestry of sand dunes and rocky outcrops. The blue tapestries of Zafar's tribe swayed gently in the breeze, creating a splash of color against the muted tones of the desert. For the first time in years, Kismet felt a sense of calm. She was safe, surrounded by the quiet strength of the desert nomads. The women of the tribe welcomed her with open arms, offering her dates and cool water. They spoke in soft voices, their eyes filled with kindness. There were no whispers, no judging stares. They did not fear her birthmark. Instead, they seemed to regard it with a quiet curiosity. Zafar often rode beside Kismet, sharing stories of his tribe and their ancient traditions. He spoke of their reverence for the desert, their belief in the spirits that dwelled within the sand and the stars. He told her of the prophecy, a legend passed down through generations, of a woman marked by the moon who would lead them to a hidden oasis, a place of abundance and peace. One evening, as they sat around a crackling campfire, Zafar turned to Kismet. "Our tribe has been searching for the hidden oasis for many years," he said, his voice low. "The prophecy speaks of a woman with a mark of the moon who will guide us." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Your birthmark, Kismet, it is shaped like the crescent moon. Kismet touched her cheek, her fingers tracing the familiar curve. In the harem, her birthmark had been a source of shame and fear. But here, amongst these kind desert nomads, it seemed to hold a different meaning. Encouraged by Zafar's gentle nature and the acceptance she felt within the tribe, Kismet began to open up about her past. She spoke of the cold opulence of the harem, the constant whispers and judging stares. She told them of Halima's cruelty, the way she used superstition to control the concubines. Tears streamed down Kismet's face as she recounted the day she was cast out, left to die in the desert. The women of the tribe listened with compassion, their faces etched with concern. They offered words of comfort, assuring her that she was safe now, that she belonged with them. Zafar listened intently, his heart aching for her suffering. He saw a strength in her, a resilience that had allowed her to survive the harshness of the harem and the desert. He felt a growing admiration for this woman, this moon-marked Kismet, whose destiny seemed intertwined with his own. The desert night was cool, the air crisp and clear. Stars blazed across the inky canvas of the sky, a breathtaking display that Kismet had never truly appreciated from within the palace walls. The campfire crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows on the faces gathered around it. The scent of roasting meat mingled with the sweet aroma of desert herbs burning in the fire. Kismet sat beside Zafar, wrapped in a warm blanket woven from camel hair. She felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The women of the tribe had welcomed her with open arms, sharing their food, their stories, and their laughter. There were no whispers here, no judging stares. She was simply Kismet, a woman amongst women, a soul finding solace in the heart of the desert. Zafar glanced at Kismet, a warm smile touching his lips. He had been watching her since she joined the tribe, captivated by her quiet strength and gentle spirit. He admired her resilience, the way she had endured the hardships of the harem and the desert with such grace. He found himself drawn to her, to the sadness that lingered in her eyes, to the crescent moon birthmark that seemed to glow faintly in the firelight. "The desert can be a harsh mistress," Zafar said, his voice low and thoughtful. "But it also holds great secrets, hidden treasures for those who know where to look." Kismet nodded, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. She had learned that lesson firsthand. Zafar continued, "My tribe has been searching for a hidden oasis, a place spoken of in ancient legends. It is said to be a paradise, a place of abundant water and lush vegetation, a sanctuary from the harsh realities of the desert." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "It is our hope, our dream, to find this oasis and make it our new home." Kismet listened intently, captivated by Zafar's words. She understood the longing for a place to belong, a sanctuary from the storms of life. She too had dreamed of such a place, a haven where she could finally be free from the judgment and cruelty she had endured. "What will you do if you find it?" Kismet asked softly. Zafar smiled. "We will build a new life, a life of peace and prosperity. We will cultivate the land, raise our families, and honor the spirits of the desert who have guided us to this sacred place." Kismet looked at the faces around the campfire, illuminated by the flickering flames. She saw the hope in their eyes, the shared dream that bound them together. She felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced in the opulent yet isolating confines of the harem. Here, amongst these simple desert nomads, she felt accepted, valued, and cherished. As the night wore on, stories were shared, tales of bravery, resilience, and the enduring power of hope. Kismet listened, her heart swelling with emotion. She had found a new family, a new home, in the most unexpected of places. She had been cast out into the desert, left to die, But instead she had found life, a life richer and more meaningful than she could have ever imagined. Zafar continued to steal glances at Kismet throughout the evening. He saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, the gradual easing of the sadness that had haunted her. He felt a growing connection to her, a bond forged in the shared experience of the desert, in the quiet moments of understanding that passed between them. He believed, with increasing certainty, that Kismet, the woman marked by the moon, was the key to finding the hidden oasis, the answer to his tribe's prayers. And as the fire burned low, casting long shadows across the sand, he knew in his heart that their destinies were intertwined, bound together by the magic of the desert and the whisper of ancient prophecy. News traveled swiftly, even across the shifting sands. A merchant, returning from a distant oasis, stopped at the palace to trade his wares. He spoke of a nomadic tribe, led by a wise sheikh named Zafar and a woman with a crescent moon birthmark who had joined their ranks. Halima, the harem matron, overheard the merchant's tale. Her blood ran cold. Kismet, the woman she had cast out into the desert to die, was alive. And not only alive, but thriving. Rage, hot and bitter, coursed through Halima's veins. She had expected the desert to claim Kismet, to erase her from existence, but Kismet had survived, and her survival was a direct threat to Halima's authority. The other concubines might start to question her judgment, her power. The whispers that had once condemned Kismet might now turn against Halima herself. Fear, sharp and cold, mingled with her rage. She had to act quickly, decisively. She had to reclaim her control, silence any doubts before they could take root. She paced her chambers, her mind racing, searching for a solution. Then a wicked smile spread across her lips. She would weave a tale, a lie so convincing that no one would dare to question it. Halima summoned her most trusted guards. They stood before her, awaiting her command. "Kismet, the woman I banished from the harem," she began, her voice dripping with false concern, "has not only survived, but has stolen valuable treasures from the palace before fleeing." She held up a small, intricately carved wooden box. "This box," she declared, "contained jewels belonging to the Sultan himself. Kismet has stolen them and fled into the desert with a band of nomads." The guards exchanged glances, surprised by this revelation. They had witnessed Kismet's expulsion. She had left with nothing but the clothes on her back, but they knew better than to question Halima's word. "You must find her," Halima commanded, her voice hardening. "Bring her back to the palace, along with the stolen treasures, and the nomads who harbor her, they will face the Sultan's wrath." Halima knew the truth would never surface. No one would dare to contradict her. She had built her power on fear and manipulation, and she would use those same tools to crush Kismet and anyone who dared to defy her. The lie, like a venomous serpent, slithered out from the palace walls, carried on the whispers of the guards, destined to reach the ears of Sheikh Zafar and the unsuspecting Kismet. The dust cloud announced their arrival long before the palace guards crested the dune. Zafar's tribe, alerted by their scouts, had already gathered, forming a protective circle around Kismet. The camels knelt, their large, dark eyes watching the approaching riders. The blue tapestries that adorned their saddles seemed to ripple in the rising tension. Kismet stood beside Zafar, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Fear flickered in her eyes, but her chin was held high. The palace guards, clad in gleaming armor and mounted on magnificent steeds, halted a short distance from the tribe. Their leader, a stern-faced man with a scarred cheek, surveyed the scene. He held aloft a scroll, its royal seal glinting in the sunlight. "By order of the harem matron Halima," he announced, his voice ringing out across the desert, "Kismet, the thief who stole from the Sultan, is to be returned to the palace. Anyone who harbors her will face the Sultan's wrath." A murmur rippled through Zafar's tribe. They looked at Kismet, their expressions filled with disbelief. They had welcomed her into their midst, shared their food and shelter with her. They could not believe she was a thief. Zafar stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his scimitar. "We know nothing of this theft," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Kismet came to us seeking refuge. She is under our protection." The guard captain sneered. "Refuge? She is a criminal, a thief who has desecrated the Sultan's treasures. Hand her over, and you will be spared. Defy us, and you will face the consequences." Zafar's tribe tightened their circle around Kismet, their hands gripping their own weapons. They were a peaceful people, but they would not hesitate to defend one of their own. The desert wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of sand and the growing tension. Kismet stepped forward, her eyes blazing with indignation. "I stole nothing," she declared, her voice clear and strong. "Halima lies. She cast me out, left me to die in the desert. These kind people took me and offered me shelter and compassion. I will not return to the palace, to the cruelty and lies that dwell within its walls." The guard captain's eyes narrowed. He did not believe her. He raised his hand, signaling his men to advance. The horses snorted, pawing the ground, eager for action. The standoff intensified, the silence broken only by the whistling wind and the nervous shuffling of the camels. The desert, a silent witness to countless struggles, held its breath, waiting to see what would unfold. The fate of Kismet, and perhaps the future of Zafar's tribe, hung in the balance. Zafar knew they were outnumbered. He could not risk the lives of his tribe for one woman, even if that woman held a special place in his heart. He made a swift decision. "We ride," he commanded, his voice sharp and urgent. He helped Kismet onto a swift camel, then leaped onto his own. The tribe scattered, their camels surging forward, raising a cloud of dust that momentarily obscured them from the guards' view. The pursuit began. The palace guards, spurred on by the promise of reward and the fear of Halima's wrath, thundered across the desert, their horses' hooves pounding the sand. Zafar led his tribe towards a range of low hills, hoping to lose their pursuers in the rugged terrain. He glanced back at Kismet, her face pale but determined. He knew she was afraid, but she showed no sign of weakness. They rode for hours, the sun beating down mercilessly. The camels, despite their endurance, began to tire. The guards, mounted on fresher horses, were gaining ground. Zafar knew they could not outrun them forever. He needed a place to hide, a place to regroup. He remembered the stories his grandfather had told him, stories of ancient stone circles scattered throughout the desert, places of power, touched by the gods. He had seen one such circle in the distance earlier that day. It was their only hope. He changed direction, leading the tribe towards the stone circle. The guards, seeing their maneuver, followed close behind. The stone circle rose from the desert floor like ancient teeth, weathered and worn by centuries of wind and sand. Zafar led Kismet and his tribe into the circle, the towering stones offering a semblance of protection. The guards surrounded the circle, their horses snorting and stamping their hooves. The guard captain rode forward, his face contorted with anger. "Come out, Zafar," he shouted. "Hand over the thief and we will let you go." Zafar stood tall, his hand resting on his scimitar. "We will not surrender," he replied, his voice echoing amongst the stones. "Kismet is innocent. We will protect her." The guard captain laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "Then you will all die." He signaled his men, and they prepared to charge into the circle. As the guards prepared to attack, a strange stillness fell over the desert. The wind died down, and the sand settled. A hush fell over the scene, a palpable silence that seemed to amplify the tension. Zafar and Kismet exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. They both felt it, a strange energy emanating from the ancient stones, a power that seemed to hold the desert itself in its grip. The conflict between Zafar's duty to his tribe and his growing love for Kismet intensified. He knew he had to make a choice that could determine not only their fate, but the fate of everyone within the sacred circle. Kismet leaned against one of the towering stones, her heart pounding in her chest. The guards circled them, their horses restless. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer to the desert gods. When she opened them, her gaze fell upon the stone she leaned against. Carved into its weathered surface was a crescent moon, remarkably similar to the birthmark on her cheek. She reached out, her fingers tracing the ancient carving. "Zafar," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. "Look." Zafar, his hand still gripping his scimitar, moved to her side. He followed her gaze to the carving on the stone. His eyes widened in surprise. The crescent moon was identical to Kismet's birthmark, even in its subtle curves and the way it tapered at the ends. He had heard stories of these ancient stones, whispers of their mystical properties, but he had never witnessed anything like this. He ran his hand over the carving, his fingers tracing the cool, smooth surface of the stone. Other symbols were etched around the crescent moon, symbols he vaguely recognized from the stories his grandfather had told him about the prophecy. The prophecy of the moon-marked woman who would lead his tribe to the hidden oasis. He looked at Kismet, her face pale in the dappled sunlight filtering through the stones. Her birthmark, usually a subtle mark against her skin, seemed to glow faintly in the strange light of the circle. Could she be the one? Could this be the sign he had been searching for? He turned back to the stone, his mind racing. The prophecy had spoken of a map, a hidden guide etched in stone. Could this be it? Could the carvings on these ancient stones hold the key to finding the oasis? He studied the symbols surrounding the crescent moon, his brow furrowed in concentration. He recognized some of them, ancient symbols representing water, earth, and the stars. But their arrangement, their relationship to the crescent moon, remained a mystery. "The prophecy," Zafar murmured, his voice barely audible above the restless snorting of the guards' horses. "It spoke of a map, a guide hidden in stone." Kismet's eyes widened. She looked at the carving, then back at Zafar. "You think this is it?" she whispered. Zafar nodded slowly. "It is possible," he said. "The crescent moon, it is identical to your birthmark." He ran his hand over the other carvings, trying to decipher their meaning. "There are other symbols here, symbols of water, earth, and the stars. They must be clues, pieces of the puzzle." He looked at Kismet, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Perhaps," he said softly, "you are the one, Kismet, the woman marked by the moon, destined to lead us to the oasis." Zafar and Kismet studied the carvings together, their fingers tracing the ancient symbols. The guard captain's shouts faded into the background, a distant buzz against the growing silence within the circle. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that shifted and danced across the weathered stones. Kismet noticed that as the sun moved, a sliver of light fell upon a specific carving, a spiral shape nestled amongst the other symbols. "Zafar," she said, pointing to the spiral. "Look." Zafar followed her gaze. As the sunlight touched the spiral, it seemed to shimmer as if imbued with a hidden energy. He realized the spiral was not just a single carving, but a series of concentric circles, growing smaller and smaller toward the center. "It looks like a spring," Kismet murmured, her voice filled with wonder. Zafar's heart leaped. A spring. The prophecy had mentioned a hidden spring, a source of life in the heart of the desert. Could this be it? He traced the lines leading from the crescent moon to the spiral, a path etched in stone, a map to the hidden water. He realized the other symbols represented constellations, their positions in the sky guiding the way to the spring. He looked at Kismet, her eyes shining with excitement. "I think we've found it," he said, his voice hushed with awe. "A map to a hidden spring, the key to finding the oasis." Kismet's hand trembled as she traced the path from the crescent moon to the spiral. She felt a strange connection to these ancient stones, to the secrets they held. She had been cast out, rejected, and left to die in the desert. Yet here, in this forgotten place, she had found a purpose, a destiny she never could have imagined. Zafar explained his understanding of the symbols, the constellations, and their relationship to the spring. Kismet listened intently, her mind absorbing the information. She had always been quick to learn, her mind sharp and observant. She quickly grasped the concept, seeing the patterns and connections that Zafar had deciphered. Together they traced the path on the stone, their fingers moving in unison. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices filled with the thrill of discovery. They had found a hidden message, a secret whispered across the centuries, a promise of life in the heart of the desert. The guards' shouts, the threat of capture, faded into insignificance. In that moment, within the ancient stone circle, they were alone, united by a shared purpose, a shared destiny. They had found the key, and now they had to unlock the secret of the oasis. Zafar and Kismet emerged from the shadow of the ancient stones, their faces alight with a newfound hope. The guards, still circling restlessly on their horses, seemed momentarily forgotten. The discovery of the hidden spring, the key to the oasis, filled them with a sense of purpose that transcended their immediate danger. "We must tell the tribe," Zafar said, his voice firm. "They need to know we have found the way." Kismet nodded, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the desert nomads who stood defiantly between them and the palace guards. She saw the worry etched on their brows, the fear in their eyes. They believed Halima's lies, believing she had stolen from the Sultan. She knew she had to clear her name, to prove her innocence. "And we must confront Halima," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We must expose her lies, show everyone the truth." Zafar placed his hand on her shoulder, his touch reassuring. "We will," he promised. Together. They gathered the tribe within the stone circle, the ancient stones radiating a silent power. Zafar explained their discovery, the map etched in stone, the hidden spring that would lead them to the oasis. He pointed to the carvings, explaining the symbols, the constellations, and the path they must follow. The tribe listened intently, their initial fear giving way to wonder and excitement. They had been searching for the oasis for generations, and now, thanks to Kismet and the ancient stones, they had finally found the way. Kismet spoke next, her voice clear and strong. She told them of Halima's lies, the false accusations of theft, the cruelty that had led to her expulsion from the harem. She recounted her journey through the desert, her despair, and the kindness of Zafar and his tribe. She spoke with such honesty, such conviction, that the tribe believed her without question. They had seen her kindness, her gentle spirit. They knew she was incapable of the treachery Halima had accused her of. A murmur of anger rippled through the tribe. They had been deceived, manipulated by a woman who claimed to protect them, but had instead used them for her own selfish purposes. They were ready to defend Kismet, to fight for the truth. Zafar, sensing the shift in the tribe's mood, raised his hand for silence. "We will return to the palace," he announced, his voice resonating with authority. "We will confront Halima and expose her lies to the Sultan. We will clear Kismet's name and reveal the truth about the oasis." The tribe erupted in cheers, their voices echoing amongst the ancient stones. They were ready to follow Zafar, to fight for justice and for their new home. Zafar and Kismet sat by the fire that night, discussing their plan. They would return to the palace at dawn, presenting the evidence of Halima's lies and the discovery of the oasis. They knew it would be dangerous, but they were determined to succeed. "We will need proof," Kismet said, her brow furrowed in thought. "Something to convince the Sultan of Halima's deceit," Zafar nodded. "The carvings on the stones," he said. "They are our proof. We will show him the map, the hidden spring, the key to the oasis. He will see the truth." Well, they agreed that Zafar would address the Sultan directly, while Kismet would stand as a witness, ready to testify to Halima's cruelty and the tribe's innocence. They knew it was a risky plan, but they had faith in the truth and in the power of the desert gods to guide them. As the first rays of dawn painted the desert sky, Zafar and Kismet mounted their camels, ready to face their destiny. The tribe followed, their faces filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. They were leaving the safety of the desert, venturing into the heart of the enemy's territory, but they were united in their purpose, their belief in justice, and their faith in the woman marked by the moon. The desert air was cool and crisp as the first rays of dawn painted the eastern sky. Zafar stood before his tribe, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the sand. The camels knelt patiently, their breath misting in the morning air. The blue tapestries, symbols of their nomadic life, hung still in the quiet dawn. Kismet stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She had found a strength within herself she never knew she possessed. "We ride for justice," Zafar announced, his voice strong and clear. "We ride for truth." He looked at each member of his tribe, his gaze meeting theirs. "Halima has lied to us. She has lied to the Sultan. She has used fear and superstition to maintain her power, to control the lives of others." He gestured towards Kismet. "This woman," he said, his voice filled with respect and admiration, "was cast out, abandoned in the desert to die. She was accused of theft, a crime she did not commit, but instead of succumbing to despair, she showed compassion, tending to an injured creature even in her own distress. She is not a thief," Zafar declared, his voice rising. "She is a healer, a guide, a woman of great strength and kindness. She has shown us the way to the hidden oasis, the answer to our prayers. She has shown us the path to a new life, a life of peace and prosperity." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his tribe. "We will return to the palace," he continued. "We will confront Halima and expose her lies. We will clear Kismet's name and reveal the truth about the oasis. We will show the Sultan the map etched in the ancient stones, the guide that will lead us to our new home." A murmur of agreement rippled through the tribe. They had seen Kismet's kindness, her courage. They believed in Zafar's leadership, his unwavering commitment to justice. They were ready to follow him, to fight for what was right. Zafar turned to Kismet, a warm smile touching his lips. "You have given us hope, Kismet," he said softly. "You have shown us the way." Kismet looked at Zafar, her heart swelling with emotion. She had been cast out, rejected, and alone, but now she had found a place to belong, a purpose to fulfill. The crescent moon birthmark on her cheek, once a symbol of misfortune, now felt like a blessing, a mark of destiny. She was no longer moon-cursed Kismet. She was Kismet, the guide, the woman who would lead a tribe to a new beginning. The women of the tribe gathered around Kismet, their faces filled with admiration and support. They offered her words of encouragement, their voices soft and reassuring. They helped her prepare for the journey back to the palace, braiding her hair and adorning her with simple but elegant desert jewelry. They saw her not as a rival, but as a sister, a leader, a woman who had found her strength in the heart of the desert. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the sand. The tribe prepared to depart. They packed their meager belongings, secured their water skins, and mounted their camels. Zafar and Kismet rode at the head of the procession, their figures silhouetted against the rising sun. They were leaving the familiar comfort of the desert, venturing into the unknown, but they were not afraid. They carried with them the truth, the hope of a new beginning, and the unwavering support of a tribe united in their pursuit of justice. The ancient stone circle stood silent and still under the midday sun. Zafar's tribe had gathered within its embrace, a small island of defiance in the vast ocean of sand. Zafar stood beside Kismet, his hand resting on the hilt of his scimitar. He knew this confrontation was inevitable. He just prayed it wouldn't end in bloodshed. A cloud of dust billowed on the horizon, growing larger with every passing moment. The palace guards, led by the same stern-faced captain, were returning. They had not given up their pursuit. They were coming for Kismet. The guards thundered into the stone circle, their horses snorting and pawing the ground. The captain's face was a mask of fury. "Zafar," he boomed, his voice echoing amongst the stones, "you have defied the harem matron's orders. Hand over Kismet, and we will show you mercy." Zafar stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Kismet is innocent," he said. "Halima has lied. We have proof." He gestured towards the carvings on the stones, the map to the hidden spring, the key to the oasis. The captain scoffed. "Proof? These childish scribbles? You think the Sultan will believe such nonsense?" He signaled his men. "Seize Kismet," he commanded. The guards spurred their horses forward, their armor glinting in the sunlight. They rode towards Kismet, intent on dragging her back to the palace. Zafar's tribe surged forward to protect her, their own weapons drawn. The air crackled with tension, the silence broken only by the snorting of horses and the shouts of men. But before the guards could reach Kismet, something extraordinary happened. The ground beneath their horses' hooves began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the sand, spreading like spiderwebs across the desert floor. The horses reared back, their eyes wide with terror, sensing the impending danger. The captain, caught off guard, yelled at his men to retreat. But it was too late. The ground beneath them gave way, opening up into a deep chasm. The horses screamed as they plunged into the darkness, their riders dragged down with them. Clouds of dust and sand billowed up from the chasm, obscuring the horrifying scene. The remaining guards, witnessing the sudden and terrifying fate of their comrades, reined in their horses, their faces pale with fear. They looked at the chasm, then at Zafar and Kismet, their eyes wide with disbelief. The desert, once a silent witness, had spoken. It had intervened, proving Halima's lies and protecting the innocent. The guards, their bravado gone, turned their horses and fled, leaving behind a scene of devastation and a lingering sense of awe. Zafar's tribe watched them go, their hearts filled with a mixture of relief and wonder. They had witnessed a miracle, a sign of divine intervention, and they knew, with absolute certainty, that Kismet was not cursed, but blessed. The crescent moon on her cheek, once a symbol of misfortune, now shone with a divine light. The dust settled, revealing the gaping chasm where the guards and their horses had vanished. A stunned silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the soft murmurs of Zafar's tribe. Zafar stepped forward, his voice ringing with newfound authority. "The desert has spoken," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the remaining guards. "It has shown us the truth. Kismet is innocent. Halima lied." He pointed towards the fleeing guards. "Tell everyone what you have witnessed here today," he commanded. "Tell them how the desert swallowed Halima's lies. Tell them how the earth itself rose up to protect the innocent." He turned to the members of his tribe, his voice softening. "We have been deceived, manipulated by a woman who claimed to protect us, but instead used our fears against us. She cast Kismet out, not for any wrongdoing, but because of a simple birthmark, a mark she twisted into a symbol of misfortune. He reached out and gently touched Kismet's cheek, his fingers tracing the curve of the crescent moon. "This mark," he said, his voice filled with tenderness, "is not a curse, it is a blessing. It is a sign of her connection to the desert, to the ancient wisdom of these lands." He turned back to the remaining guards, his voice hardening. "Go back to the palace. Tell Halima what you saw here. Tell her that her lies have been exposed, her cruelty revealed. Tell her that her reign of fear is over." The remaining guards, shaken and humbled, nodded their heads. They had witnessed something beyond their understanding, a power greater than Halima's authority. They turned their horses and rode away, carrying the news of Halima's deceit back to the palace. Word of the events at the stone circle spread quickly through the palace. The concubines, who had once whispered against Kismet, now spoke her name with reverence and awe. They had seen the truth in the desert's intervention, the proof of Halima's lies. Their fear of the crescent moon birthmark vanished, replaced by a newfound respect for the woman they had once shunned. Halima, hearing the whispers, felt her power slipping away. The carefully constructed web of lies she had woven was unraveling. The fear she had used to control the harem was turning against her. The concubines, emboldened by the news of Kismet's vindication, began to speak openly against Halima's cruelty and manipulation. The Sultan, hearing the rumors of the desert miracle and the unrest in his harem, summoned Halima to his chambers. He listened in silence as she stammered and stumbled through her excuses, her voice devoid of its usual confidence. He had seen the fear in the eyes of the returning guards, heard the whispers of his concubines. He knew the truth. Halima's reign of fear was over. Her power, built on lies and superstition, crumbled before the truth revealed by the desert and the courage of a woman marked by the moon. The Sultan, with a heavy heart, stripped Halima of her authority. Her reign of fear was over, replaced by the promise of a new era of kindness and understanding within the palace walls. Zafar, with Kismet by his side, led his tribe across the shimmering sands. Kismet, remembering the map etched in the ancient stones, guided them with unwavering certainty. She pointed to the constellations that marked their path, her voice soft but sure. The tribe followed, their hearts filled with hope and anticipation. They were on a pilgrimage, a journey to a promised land. The desert, once a formidable adversary, now seemed to welcome them, the wind whispering secrets in their ears, the sun guiding their way. After days of travel, they reached a narrow canyon, its walls carved with ancient symbols similar to those in the stone circle. Kismet recognized them instantly. This was the entrance to the hidden oasis. They followed the canyon's winding path, the air growing cooler, the scent of water growing stronger. Then, as they rounded a final bend, they gasped. Before them lay a hidden valley, a lush paradise nestled in the heart of the desert. A crystal-clear spring gurgled from the rocks, feeding a network of streams that nourished date palms, fig trees, and fragrant herbs. Birds sang in the branches, their melodies echoing through the valley. It was a haven, a sanctuary, the oasis of their dreams. The tribe erupted in cheers, their voices filled with joy and relief. They had found their new home, the promised land foretold in the ancient prophecy. They dismounted their camels, their feet sinking into the soft grass, a welcome change from the harsh desert sand. They embraced one another, tears of gratitude streaming down their faces. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The woman marked by the moon had led them to paradise. They celebrated their arrival with a feast, roasting meat over open fires and sharing stories of their journey. They danced under the stars, their movements expressing their joy and gratitude. Kismet, the woman who had once been outcast and alone, was now the center of their celebration, the heart of their new community. After the festivities, Zafar approached Kismet, his eyes filled with admiration. "You have saved us, Kismet," he said softly. "You have brought us home." Kismet smiled, her heart filled with warmth. "This is our home now, Zafar," she replied. "All of us." Zafar knew he had to return to the palace to ensure Halima's lies were fully exposed and that his tribe would not be pursued further. He gathered a small group of his most trusted men, along with several sacks filled with the fruits and herbs of the oasis as proof of its existence. He bid farewell to Kismet, promising to return as soon as he could. The journey back to the palace was swift. Zafar, fueled by his desire to clear Kismet's name and secure his tribe's future, rode with unwavering determination. He arrived at the palace gates, the sacks of fragrant oasis produce slung across his camel's back. He requested an audience with the Sultan, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had witnessed a miracle and held the truth in his hands. He presented the Sultan with the fruits and herbs, the undeniable proof of the oasis's existence. He recounted the events at the stone circle, the desert's intervention, and Halima's lies. He spoke of Kismet's kindness, her courage, and her wisdom, the qualities that had led them to the hidden paradise. The Sultan, already aware of the unrest in his harem and the whispers of Halima's deceit, listened intently. He saw the truth in Zafar's eyes, the sincerity in his words. He knew that Halima had betrayed his trust, and he was grateful for Zafar's courage in exposing her lies. The Sultan, his face etched with regret, ordered Halima's removal. She was stripped of her finery and escorted from the palace, her reign of fear finally at an end. A new matron was appointed, a woman known for her kindness and wisdom. She immediately began to reform the harem, dispelling the superstitions that had plagued the women for so long. The whispers and judging stares ceased. The crescent moon, once a symbol of misfortune, was now viewed with respect and wonder. Zafar returned to the oasis, his heart soaring with the news of Halima's downfall and the changes in the harem. He found Kismet tending to the tribe's children, her laughter mingling with their joyful cries. He watched her for a moment, his heart filled with love and admiration. She had found her place, her purpose, in this desert paradise. Kismet saw Zafar approach, a warm smile spreading across her face. She rose to greet him, her eyes shining with happiness. He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Halima is gone," he said softly. "The harem has been reformed. The superstitions are no more." Kismet nodded, a sense of peace washing over her. She had been vindicated, her name cleared. The crescent moon birthmark on her cheek, once a source of shame, now felt like a badge of honor. "Will you return to the palace?" Zafar asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. He longed for her to stay, but he knew she had a choice to make. Kismet looked at the faces of the tribe, the children playing in the shade of the date palms, the women weaving tapestries, the men tending to the crops. She had found a home here, a family, a sense of belonging she had never known before. "My place is here, Zafar," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "With you, with your tribe. This is where I belong." Zafar's heart leapt with joy. He embraced her, holding her close, his cheek against her hair. "You are the heart of our tribe, Kismet," he whispered, "our guide, our healer, our storyteller." Kismet became an integral part of the tribe, sharing her knowledge of herbs and healing, tending to the sick and injured. She told stories around the campfire, tales of the harem, the desert, and the miracle that had brought them all together. The children loved her stories, their eyes wide with wonder as they listened to her tales of courage and resilience. The story of Kismet, The woman marked by the moon, who had led the tribe to the hidden oasis, became a legend, whispered through the desert sands for generations to come. Her crescent birthmark, once a symbol of misfortune, was now celebrated as a sign of blessing and good fortune. It was a reminder of the power of kindness, the importance of truth, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the sun set on their new beginning, casting long shadows across the oasis, Zafar and Kismet stood hand in hand, their faces bathed in the warm glow of the desert sunset. They shared a final, loving embrace, their hearts filled with gratitude and the promise of a future filled with love, peace, and the enduring magic of the desert.